The line drawn. The meeting room on Earth's lunar station was quiet. Too quiet for what Ambassador Elena Vasquez was about to do. She looked at the holographic display showing the 47 star systems that humanity called home. Each point of light represented millions of human lives spread across colonies, mining stations, and research outposts. "Are you sure about this?" asked Admiral Chen, her weathered face showing concern. "Once we deliver this message, there's no going back." Elena nodded slowly. She had practiced this moment for months. The Terran Colonial Council had voted. The decision was final. Humanity would draw a line in space, and they would defend it. The Zephyrian Empire needs to understand that we're not just another species they can push around, Elena said. She touched the datapad containing humanity's ultimatum. "They've been testing our borders for 3 years, taking our ships, demanding tribute from our outer colonies. It ends today." The shuttle carrying Elena to the Imperial flagship was small and simple. It looked harmless compared to the massive Zephyrian vessel that hung in space like a metal moon. The Empire's ship was 10 times larger than anything humans had built. Its hull was covered in weapon ports and armor plating that gleamed under the light of Earth's sun. Elena felt her stomach twist as the shuttle docked. She had met Zephyrians before, but never on their own ship. Never to deliver a threat. The Imperial reception chamber was designed to make visitors feel small. The ceiling stretched up into darkness. Massive statues of Zephyrian warriors lined the walls. At the far end, War Marshal Thyvan sat on a throne made from the metal of conquered worlds. Thyvan was typical of his species, 3 meters tall with gray skin that looked like stone. His eyes were black and cold, 4 arms ending in clawed hands. When he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding metal. "The little human comes to our ship," Thyvan said. His translator made. His words sound mocking. "How brave! How foolish!" Elena walked forward. Her boots echoed in the vast chamber. She stopped at the required distance and held up the datapad. "I bring a message from the Terran Colonial Council," she said. Her voice was steady despite her fear. "A formal notice of sovereignty." Thyvan laughed. The sound was harsh and ugly. Other Zephyrian officers joined in. The laughter filled the chamber like the roar of machinery. "Sovereignty?" Thyvan stood up from his throne. "You control 47 tiny star systems. We control thousands. What sovereignty can insects claim?" Elena activated the datapad. A holographic map appeared between them. It showed human space surrounded by a glowing barrier. "This is the sovereignty perimeter," Elena said. "It marks the boundary of human space. Any Imperial ship that crosses this line will be considered an act of war." The laughter stopped. Thyvan's black eyes focused on the map. He studied it for a long moment. "You threaten us?" His voice was dangerous now. "You dare to threaten the Empire?" "It's not a threat," Elena replied. "It's a statement of fact. Cross the line, and there will be consequences." Thyvan moved closer. Each step shook the floor. He towered over Elena, his 4 arms spread wide in a display of dominance. "What consequences can you bring?" he asked. "Your entire fleet could not challenge one of our battle groups. Your weapons are primitive. Your soldiers are weak. What consequences?" Elena looked up at the massive alien warrior. She thought about the secret construction projects, the hidden weapons, the plans that had been in motion for decades, plans that the Empire knew nothing about. "You'll find out if you cross the line," she said simply. Thyvan stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. "Return to your little worlds, human," he said. "Tell your leaders that the Empire goes where it pleases. Your line means nothing to us." Elena bowed slightly. "The message has been delivered. What you do with it is your choice." She turned and walked away. Behind her, she could hear Thyvan giving orders to his officers. They were all ready. planning to test the human boundary. Back on the lunar station, Elena met with the council leaders. The room was full of tension. "How did they react?" asked General Morrison. "Exactly as we expected," Elena replied. "They don't take us seriously. They think we're bluffing." Admiral Chen pulled up tactical displays. "The automated beacons are ready. We can have the perimeter marked within a week." "Do it," said Council President Zhang. "Make sure the warnings are clear. We want no confusion about where the line is drawn." Over the next 7 days, human ships placed warning beacons at every jump point leading into their space. The beacons broadcast in 847 different languages. The message was simple. This is the boundary of human sovereign space. Entry without permission is forbidden. Violators will face immediate response. The Zephyrian Empire received copies of the boundary coordinates. So did every other major power in the galaxy. Most ignored the news. A few sent diplomatic messages asking if humanity had lost its mind. On the border worlds, human colonists began to see changes. Military ships appeared in orbit. Defense platforms were activated. Emergency drills became common. Children asked their parents why the soldiers looked so serious. The evacuation plans were quietly updated. Every colony world had them, but now they were tested and improved. Transport ships were moved into position. Critical personnel were briefed on new protocols. Elena stood in the command center on Luna, watching the tactical display. Red dots showed Zephyrian ships gathering near the boundary. They were massing forces for a probe. "How long?" she asked Admiral Chen. "Intelligence says 3 weeks," Chen replied. "Maybe less. They're bringing up the 47th Fleet." Elena nodded. She thought about the families on the border worlds. The miners and farmers and researchers who had built new lives among the stars. They trusted their government to protect them. Soon, that trust would be tested. "Any word from our deep assets?" Elena asked. "All in position," Chen confirmed. "Operation Sleeping Giant is ready to activate on your command." Elena looked at the map again. The glowing line that marked human space seemed so thin, so fragile. But she knew the truth. The line wasn't just a boundary, it was a trigger. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years. They had crushed dozens of species. They thought they understood how war worked. They were about to learn that humans had their own ideas about warfare. 3 days later, the first Imperial scout ships reached the boundary beacons. They scanned the automated platforms and transmitted the data back to their fleet commanders. The humans had drawn their line exactly where they said they would. War Marshal Thyvan reviewed the scout reports from his flagship. The human boundary looked real enough, but it was just empty space protected by primitive warning beacons, nothing that could stop an Imperial fleet. He opened a communication channel to the Emperor. The ancient Zephyrian ruler listened to Thyvan's report with amusement. "They actually did it," Emperor Kithax said. His voice carried the weight of centuries. "The insects drew a line in space. How entertaining." "Should we cross it, Majesty?" Thyvan asked. "Of course," the Emperor replied. "But do it properly. Choose a minor system. Make it clear that human threats mean nothing to the Empire. Then we'll see how brave these mammals really are." The order was given. The 47th Fleet began moving toward the human boundary. Their target was the Kepler 442 system, a small mining colony with minimal defenses. Elena received the alert in her quarters on Luna. She looked at the tactical display showing Imperial ships crossing the line. After 3 years of preparation, it had finally begun. She opened a secure channel to Admiral Chen. "They crossed," she said simply. "Confirmed," Chen replied. "Kepler 442, just as we predicted." Elena closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her face was hard as stone. "Execute Protocol Omega," she said. The line had been crossed. Now the Empire would learn what that meant. The Empire's arrogance Emperor Kithax sat in his throne room on Zephyria Prime, the capital world of an empire that spanned 3 arms of the galaxy. The chamber was built from the bones of extinct species, each pillar telling the story of another. Conquered civilization. Kithax had ruled for 800 years, and in all that time no species had dared to threaten him. Until now. "The humans have done what?" he asked, his ancient voice carrying disbelief. War Marshal Thyvan knelt before the throne, his 4 arms spread in submission. "They have drawn a boundary around their space, Majesty. They call it a sovereignty perimeter. They claim any crossing will be an act of war." Kithax laughed, a sound like breaking glass. 47 systems, 47 tiny worlds, and they threaten the Empire? How many ships do they have? "Perhaps 300 vessels of significant size," Thyvan reported. "Their largest ships are 1/10 the mass of our cruisers. Their weapons are chemical and kinetic. Primitive fusion drives. And they threaten us with these toys?" Kithax stood from his throne, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber. "What have we become, Thyvan, that insects feel bold enough to buzz in our ears?" "Perhaps a demonstration would remind the galaxy of imperial power," Thyvan suggested. "The humans have a mining colony in the Kepler 442 system, minimal defenses. We could take it easily." Kithax considered this. The Empire had not fought a real war in 50 years. Their last major campaign had crushed the hegemony, and that had taken only 6 months. Perhaps the younger species had forgotten why they should fear the Empire. "Yes," the Emperor decided, "but do it properly. I want the humans to understand their place. Take the 47th Fleet. Make sure there are survivors to spread the word." "It will be done, Majesty." 3 days later, the 47th Fleet assembled at the edge of human space. 200 Imperial vessels, led by Thyvan's flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds. Each ship was a masterpiece of Imperial engineering, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Thyvan stood on his bridge, studying the tactical display. The human boundary beacon floated ahead of them, broadcasting its warning in hundreds of languages. Such arrogance from such a small species. "Communications," Thyvan ordered. "Send a message to the human colony. Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender." The communications officer worked at his station. "Message sent, War Marshal. No response from the colony." Thyvan nodded. He had not expected the humans to be reasonable. They would learn through pain. All ships cross the boundary. Proceed to Kepler 442. The Imperial fleet moved forward as one. They crossed the glowing line that marked human space without ceremony. No human ships appeared to challenge them. No weapons fired. The boundary was as empty as Thyvan had expected. The journey to Kepler 442 took 18 hours. Thyvan used the time to review Imperial doctrine for dealing with primitive species. The key was to be overwhelming but not completely destructive. Leave enough survivors to tell others what happened. "Approaching the target system," reported the navigation officer. "Sensors report," Thyvan ordered. 1 inhabited planet. 3 small orbital stations. No ships detected. The colony appears to be evacuated. Thyvan frowned. "Evacuated? Where are the colonists?" "Unknown, War Marshal. We detect no life signs on the planet or stations." This was unexpected. Thyvan had planned to accept the colonists' surrender, then occupy their world as an example to other humans. An empty planet served no purpose. Perhaps they fled when they saw our approach, suggested the tactical officer. "Cowards," Thyvan said with disgust. "Very well. We'll destroy their infrastructure. The humans will understand that running saves nothing." The fleet moved into orbit around the mining world. The planet was small and rocky, covered with extraction sites and processing facilities. All appeared abandoned. "Target the mining facilities," Thyvan ordered. "Begin bombardment." The first salvo of Imperial weapons struck the planet's surface. Massive explosions bloomed across the continents as fusion warheads destroyed the human installations. The fleet continued firing for 10 minutes, reducing the colony to rubble. Then something went wrong. War Marshal. The sensor officer's voice was sharp with alarm. Energy surge from the planet's core. What? Thyvan spun toward the tactical display. Explain! The readings are impossible. It looks like they've collapsed a section of the planetary core. The gravitational field is fluctuating. Thyvan stared at the display in shock. The humans had done something to their own planet. Something that was creating localized gravity wells. All ships, withdraw to safe distance, he ordered. But it was too late. 3 gravity mines, hidden deep in the planet's crust, activated simultaneously. They had been designed to look like normal mining equipment until the moment they were triggered. Now they collapsed matter into microscopic black holes that lasted just long enough to tear apart anything nearby. 3 Imperial dreadnoughts, the pride of the 47th Fleet, were caught in the gravity wells. Their shields failed first, then their hulls began to stretch and tear. The crews screamed as their ships were pulled apart by forces beyond their understanding. In less than 5 minutes, 3 vessels that had taken decades to build were reduced to streams of superheated metal spiraling into artificial singularities. Withdraw! Thyvan screamed. All ships, emergency jump! The surviving ships of the 47th Fleet fled the system in panic. Behind them, the gravity mines burned out, leaving only empty space where 3 Imperial dreadnoughts had died. On the bridge of his flagship, Thyvan tried to understand what had happened. The humans had booby-trapped their own planet. They had sacrificed an entire colony to destroy Imperial ships. What kind of species did such things? Get me a communication line to Zephyria Prime, he ordered. The holographic image of Emperor Kithax appeared on the bridge. The ancient ruler's expression was thunderous. Report, Kithax demanded. The human colony was abandoned, Thyvan said carefully. But they had prepared a trap. Gravity weapons hidden in the planet's core. We lost 3 dreadnoughts. Silence stretched between them. Kithax's black eyes burned with fury. You lost 3 Imperial dreadnoughts to an empty planet? The Emperor's voice was deadly quiet. The weapons were unlike anything we've encountered, Thyvan tried to explain. They used the planet's own mass against us. Enough! Kithax's roar filled the bridge. You will return to human space with a proper fleet. Show them what happens when they use tricks against the Empire. How many ships, Majesty? 3 fleets. The 12th, 31st, and 89th. 2,000 ships. Enough to burn every human world to ash. Thyvan bowed his head. It will be done. The Emperor's image flickered out, leaving Thyvan alone with his shame. He had underestimated the humans, and now the Empire would respond with overwhelming force. Perhaps that was for the best. These mammals had proven they were dangerous in ways no one had expected. On Zephyria Prime, Emperor Kithax paced in his throne room. 3 dreadnoughts lost to an empty planet. It was impossible. It was insulting. The humans had made him look weak before the entire galaxy. Summon the War Council, he ordered his aide. The humans want to play with gravity weapons? We'll show them what real power looks like. Within hours, Imperial propaganda broadcasts began spreading across the galaxy. The message was simple. The humans had used cowardly terrorist tactics against Imperial forces. In response, the Empire would demonstrate proper military might. The broadcasts mocked human cowardice for evacuating their colony rather than fighting, honorably. They promised that the coming Imperial response would teach all species the price of defying the Empire. But in the secret chambers of the Imperial Palace, military analysts studied the gravity mine data with growing concern. The technology was beyond anything the humans were supposed to possess. The weapons had been precisely calibrated and expertly hidden. This suggested planning that went back years. Fleet Admiral Corax reviewed the technical reports with his staff. How long would it take to create such weapons? He asked. Decades, replied the chief scientist. The gravitational mathematics alone would require massive computational resources, and the engineering to hide them in a planet's core. You're saying the humans have been planning this for decades? It's the only explanation that makes sense. Korax felt a chill run through his armored body. If the humans had been planning for decades, what else had they prepared? What other surprises waited for Imperial forces? He tried to dismiss the thought. The Empire had 2,000 ships ready to launch. No matter what tricks the humans had prepared, they could not stand against such overwhelming force. But doubt remained. The humans had drawn their line and defended it with weapons that should not exist. They had sacrificed their own colony to kill Imperial soldiers. What kind of species thought that way? Soon, Korax told himself, they would find out. The full might of the Imperial Navy was gathering. 3 fleets that had conquered hundreds of worlds would descend on human space like a metal storm. The humans had wanted to play war with the Empire. Now they would learn what war really meant. In the depths of space, automated beacons continued broadcasting their warnings about the human boundary. The message had not changed, but now it carried a different weight. The line had been crossed, and Imperial blood had been spilled. Humanity's Response Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center on Luna, watching as the Imperial fleet massed at the edge of human space. 2,000 ships. The largest military force assembled in this region of the galaxy for over a century. The weight of what was about to happen pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. Final count confirmed, reported Intelligence Officer Martinez. The 12th, 31st, and 89th Imperial Fleets. They're calling it Operation Swift Judgment. Swift, Chen repeated with a bitter smile. They still don't understand what they're dealing with. Around the command center, dozens of officers worked at their stations. The room hummed with quiet activity, but there was tension in the air. Everyone knew that the next few hours would determine humanity's fate. Admiral, communications. Officer Park called out. We're receiving a broadcast from the Imperial Fleet. War Marshal Thiven demands our immediate surrender. Put it through, Chen ordered. The main display lit up with the image of the massive Zephyrian warrior. His 4 arms were spread wide in a gesture of dominance. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship showed hundreds of alien officers preparing for battle. Humans. Thiven's translated voice filled the command center. You have committed acts of terrorism against the Imperial Navy. Your cowardly tricks have killed Imperial soldiers. This cannot be forgiven. Chen listened without expression. She had expected this speech. I offer you one chance to surrender, Thiven continued. Open your borders. Submit to Imperial rule. Accept responsibility for your crimes. Do this, and your deaths will be quick. The transmission ended. The command center was silent for a moment. Should we respond? Asked Park. No, Chen said quietly. Let them think we're paralyzed with fear. It will make what comes next more effective. She walked to her command chair and sat down. Her hands found the sealed panel on the armrest. Inside was a single red button marked with the words, Protocol. Omega! She had hoped never to use it. All stations, report status, she ordered. Deep strike assets report ready, said Martinez. Sleeper networks report ready, added Park. Fleet assets report ready, called out Tactical Officer Singh. Chen took a deep breath. Protocol Omega had been in development for 30 years. Every human who had left Earth's solar system had been part of it, whether they knew it or not. Every colony ship, every trade mission, every diplomatic contact had been laying the groundwork for this moment. This is Admiral Chen to all human forces, she announced. The line has been crossed. The Empire has chosen war. Execute Protocol Omega. Repeat, execute Protocol Omega. Across human space, the message was received and confirmed. On 1,000 worlds, human agents who had lived quiet lives as merchants, diplomats, and researchers revealed their true purpose. Ships that had pretended to be civilian transports dropped their false hulls to reveal military hardware. Weapons, platforms that had been disguised as asteroid mining stations came online. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that humanity had been preparing for this war since the day they first met alien life. On the Imperial flagship, War Marshal Thyvan watched the human boundary with growing impatience. 3 hours had passed since his ultimatum. The humans had not responded. They were probably arguing among themselves, trying to decide whether to surrender or flee. "War Marshal," his sensor officer called out. "Strange readings from the human border. Energy signatures are fluctuating." "Explain," Thyvan ordered. "It appears to be some kind of transmission array. Very powerful. The signal is being broadcast across multiple star systems." Thyvan dismissed it with a wave of his hand. "Probably a distress call. The humans are begging their allies for help." He could not have been more wrong. The transmission was not a distress call. It was an activation signal for assets that had been positioned throughout the Empire over 3 decades. On Zephyria Prime, a human diplomat named Marcus Webb received the signal in his embassy quarters. He had served as a trade representative for 12 years, building relationships and gathering intelligence. Now he walked to his private safe and removed a small device that looked like a simple data pad. He entered his personal code and watched. As the device came alive, the screen showed a schematic of Zephyria Prime's orbital defense network. Marcus had spent years gaining access to the Imperial capital's security systems. His work as a trade representative had given him legitimate reasons to visit military installations. His friendly personality had earned him friends among the alien guards. His gifts of human alcohol had made those friends careless about security. "Time to earn my paycheck," Marcus said to himself. He activated the hidden program he had installed in the defense network's control systems. Within minutes, the orbital platforms that protected Zephyria Prime turned their weapons away from space and toward the planet below. Similar scenes played out across the Empire. On industrial worlds, power plants suddenly developed critical failures. On military bases, weapon stockpiles exploded without warning. On trade routes, navigation beacons began broadcasting false coordinates. The Empire's communication network, which had linked their thousands of worlds for centuries, began to collapse as relay stations went offline. In the space of 20 minutes, the most powerful civilization in the galaxy found itself blind, deaf, and paralyzed. But the real surprise was yet to come. At the edge of human space, the Imperial fleet detected movement. Ships were emerging from hyperspace around them, not human ships, but vessels belonging to the Empire's own client species. "War Marshal," the communications officer called out in confusion. "We're being hailed by Admiral Vorthak of the Hegemony. Fleet." Thyvan frowned. The Hegemony had been conquered by the Empire 50 years ago. Their fleet served as Imperial auxiliaries. What was Vorthak doing here? "Put him through," Thyvan ordered. The image of a reptilian Hegemony officer appeared on the screen. But instead of the submissive posture Thyvan expected, Vorthak stood straight and proud. "War Marshal Thyvan," Vorthak said formally. "I am here to inform you that the Hegemony fleet is withdrawing from Imperial service. We are declaring independence." "What?" Thyvan could barely speak. "You dare to rebel against the Empire?" "We are not rebelling," Vorthak replied calmly. "We are simply choosing freedom. The humans have shown us that the Empire can be defeated. They have offered us alliance instead of slavery." Before Thyvan could respond, more ships began appearing, fleets from a dozen client species, all announcing their independence from the Empire. The humans had been in secret contact with them for years, planning for this moment. "This is impossible," Thyvan said to his bridge crew. "How did the humans coordinate this?" His answer came in the form of a new transmission. The image of Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on every screen in the Imperial fleet. She stood on the bridge of a ship that Thyvan had never seen before, a massive vessel that seemed to be built entirely for war. "War Marshal Thyvan," Chen said in a voice that carried across space like the judgment of gods. "I am Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You asked what consequences you would face for crossing our line. Now you know." Behind Chen, the bridge, windows showed a sight that made Thyvan's blood freeze. Hundreds of human warships were dropping out of hyperspace around the Imperial fleet. Not the primitive vessels that Imperial intelligence had reported, but sleek predators bristling with weapons. "The ships you see around you have been waiting for this moment for 30 years, Chen continued. "Every human merchant vessel that visited your worlds was actually a warship in disguise. Every human colony ship carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. Every human diplomat was a spy and saboteur." Thyvan's tactical display lit up with threat indicators. His fleet was surrounded by enemies who had appeared from nowhere. "Your capital worlds are under attack," Chen said matter-of-factly. "Your communication networks are failing. Your client species are in revolt. Your empire is falling apart because you made one simple mistake." "What mistake?" Thyvan found himself asking. Chen's smile was cold as vacuum. "You thought we were weak because we showed emotion. You thought we were primitive because we valued things like revenge and justice. You were wrong on both counts." The transmission cut off, leaving Thyvan staring at empty space. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to re-establish contact with Imperial command. But there was only silence. From the direction of Zephyria Prime, "War Marshal," his tactical officer called out. "The human ships are powering weapons. They're targeting our engine sections." Thyvan realized the truth. The humans weren't going to destroy the Imperial fleet. They were going to capture it. They wanted prisoners to spread the word of what had happened here. "All ships," he transmitted to his fleet. "Prepare for battle." But even as he gave the order, Thyvan knew it was futile. The Empire had walked into a trap that had been 30 years in the making. They had crossed the line that humanity had drawn, and now they would pay the price. The war for the galaxy had begun, and the humans had already won the first battle before the Zephyrians even knew they were fighting. Admiral Chen watched the Imperial fleet scramble to respond to their situation. It was almost sad, really. These aliens had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity. The hunt begins. War Marshal Thyvan had commanded Imperial fleets for 200 years. He had conquered 12 star systems and crushed 6 rebellions. But he had never experienced anything like the current nightmare that had become his existence. 3 months had passed since the humans activated Protocol Omega. 3 months of running, hiding, and watching his once mighty empire crumble around him. The 47th Fleet, which had once numbered 200 ships, was down to 37 vessels. The rest were either destroyed or captured by the relentless human pursuit. "War Marshal," his communications officer called out from his station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Vega system. Admiral Corthan reports his fleet is under attack." Thyvan didn't bother to look up from his tactical display. Another Imperial fleet was being hunted down. It was becoming a familiar pattern. "How many ships does Corthan have left?" he asked. 43, sir. Down from 120. Thyvan closed his 4 eyes in despair. The humans didn't just fight battles. They fought a kind of war that the Empire had never encountered. They struck without warning, using tactics that no civilized species would consider. "Sir," the sensor officer spoke up nervously, "we're detecting movement on the edge of the system. 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace." "Imperial ships?" Thyvan asked with hope. "No, sir. Human configuration. They're broadcasting the death song." Thyvan felt his blood turn cold. The death song was something the humans had started during the 2nd month of the war. When human crews knew they were going to die, they would broadcast. an ancient battle hymn, while they rammed their ships into Imperial vessels. The tactic was horrifyingly effective and completely insane. "All ships, emergency jump," Thyvan ordered. "Random vectors. Don't let them track our destination." The surviving ships of his fleet vanished into hyperspace just as the human vessels began their final approach. Behind them, the three human ships continued broadcasting their death song until their voices faded into the darkness of space. On the bridge of the UTS Retribution, Admiral Sarah Chen studied the reports coming in from across the galaxy. The war was going better than even the most optimistic projections had predicted. The Empire was collapsing faster than anyone had imagined possible. "Status report," she ordered. Commander Martinez pulled up the tactical display. 14 Imperial fleets remain in the field. Total ship count is down to approximately 800 vessels. The Zephyrian home system is under siege. 3 of their major industrial worlds have surrendered. Chen nodded. The numbers were good, but she knew the cost. Every human ship that sang the death song represented dozens of lives lost. The Empire was learning that humans would pay any price to win, but the payment was real. "What about their client species?" she asked. 47 species have declared independence. 23 have formally joined our alliance. The rest are remaining neutral, but refusing to support the Empire. And their leadership? Martinez's expression grew grim. "Emperor Kithax is confirmed dead. Suicide in his throne room when our Marines breached the palace. War Marshal Thyvan is still at large with what remains of the 47th Fleet." Chen considered this. Thyvan had become something of a legend among human forces. He was the last competent Imperial commander still fighting, and his fleet had proven remarkably difficult to corner. But he was also spreading a message that the Empire didn't want their remaining forces to hear. "What's Thyvan been telling his people?" she asked. "Intelligence intercepts suggest he's warning other Imperial commanders about our capabilities. He's the one who figured out that our merchant vessels were actually warships. He's also the source of the reports about our AI boarding parties." Chen smiled grimly. The AI boarding parties were one of her favorite innovations. When human Marines captured an Imperial ship, they would download the consciousness patterns of any crew members who died in the fighting. These digital copies would then be used to crew automated vessels that fought with all the skill of the original Marines, but with none of the fear of death. It was a tactic that terrified the Imperial forces. They found themselves fighting the ghosts of enemies they had already killed. "Any word from the Kepler sector?" Chen asked. "Captain Rodriguez reports his squadron has cornered another Imperial fleet near the asteroid belt. 15 ships. They're demanding surrender. And the Imperials are refusing. They say they'd rather die than face human interrogation." Chen understood their fear. Human interrogation had become another source of terror for Imperial forces, not because humans tortured their prisoners, but because they didn't. Human intelligence officers were polite, respectful, and terrifyingly thorough. They would spend weeks learning about their captives' families, their hopes, their fears. Then they would use that information to convince the prisoners to cooperate. It was more effective than torture and far more psychologically devastating. "Tell Rodriguez to give them one more chance," Chen ordered. "If they refuse, use the standard approach." The standard approach was another human innovation. Instead of destroying enemy ships, human forces would disable them and then convert them into automated weapons platforms. The captured vessels would be programmed with the tactical knowledge of their former crews and sent to attack other Imperial forces. It meant that every Imperial ship lost to the humans became a weapon pointed at the Empire's heart. On the bridge of his battered flagship, War Marshal Thyvan received the reports from across the galaxy with growing despair. The humans weren't just winning the war. They were rewriting the rules of warfare itself. "Sir," his intelligence officer said quietly, "we've confirmed the reports from the Rigel system. The humans have converted the captured fleet into automated vessels. 60 Imperial ships are now attacking our forces." Thyvan stared at the tactical display showing the positions of remaining Imperial fleets. Red dots marked human forces. Blue dots marked Imperial survivors. The red vastly outnumbered the blue, and the gap was growing every day. "What kind of species does this?" he asked aloud. "What kind of beings convert the dead into weapons?" His aide, a young officer named Corvin, spoke up hesitantly. "The intelligence reports suggest it's not just tactical, sir. The humans see it as honoring their dead. They believe that fallen warriors continue to serve even after death." Thyvan shook his head. The human psychology was completely alien to him. They fought with emotions, anger, grief, love, hatred. But they channeled those emotions into cold, precise strategy. They would weep for their fallen comrades and then use recordings of those same comrades to crew suicide ships. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Vex. The 23rd Fleet is under attack in the Proxima system." "Put him through," Thyvan ordered. The image of Admiral Vex appeared on the screen. The Zephyrian's armor was scorched, and his face showed pure terror. "Thyvan!" Vex screamed. "You have to warn the others! These humans! They're not like any enemy we've faced!" "Calm yourself," Thyvan said. "Report your situation." "They're using our own people against us," Vex replied. "The fleet they sent, half of it is crewed by converted Imperials. Our own soldiers are attacking us." Thyvan felt his heart sink. The humans had perfected their AI conversion process. They were no longer just using human consciousness patterns. They were now using captured Imperial minds to crew their automated fleets. "How many ships are you facing?" Thyvan asked. 300, maybe more. They keep coming and they all have Imperial tactical knowledge." The transmission cut off in a burst of static. Thyvan stared at the empty screen for a long moment. "Sir," Corvin said quietly. "Orders?" Thyvan considered his options. He could continue running, hoping to preserve what remained of his fleet. He could try to make contact with other Imperial survivors and coordinate a counterattack. Or he could do what his instincts were telling him to do. Surrender and hope the humans were as honorable as their propaganda claimed. Set course for the Tau Ceti system, he decided. If Admiral Gorthak is still alive, we need to warn him about the converted fleets. As his ships entered hyperspace, Thyvan thought about the reports he had been receiving. The humans claimed they were fighting for freedom and justice. They said they wanted to liberate the galaxy from Imperial tyranny. But their methods were more terrifying than anything the Empire had ever done. They turned their enemies into weapons. They used the dead to fight the living. They fought with the fury of demons but claimed to be angels of liberation. What kind of future would the galaxy have under human rule? On Earth, President Zhang reviewed the latest war reports in her private office. The numbers were encouraging. Imperial resistance was crumbling faster than anyone had expected, but the psychological reports from human forces were concerning. "The troops are showing signs of trauma," reported Dr. Sarah Kim, the head of military psychology. "The Death Song missions are taking a heavy toll on morale, and the AI conversion process is causing some ethical concerns among the officers." Zhang nodded. She had expected this. The tactics that were winning the war were also changing the humans who used them. They were becoming something harder, colder, more ruthless than they had been before. "Are they still effective?" she asked. "Extremely. But we're creating a generation of soldiers who see death as just another tool of war. That could have long-term consequences." The new order, 18 months after the first Imperial ship crossed the human boundary, War Marshal Thyvan stood in the ruins of Zephyria Prime's greatest palace. The throne room where Emperor Kithax had ruled for 800 years was now a blackened shell. Scorch marks on the walls showed where the last Zephyrian ruler had ended his own life rather than face capture. Thyvan was the last, the final Imperial commander still free in a galaxy that no longer belonged to his species. His fleet was gone, destroyed or converted by the relentless human advance. His empire was dead. His people were scattered across the galaxy as refugees or prisoners. But he was still alive, and he had come to see the place where it all ended. Thyvan. The voice came from behind him. Human soldiers stepped aside to let Admiral Sarah Chen enter the throne room. She looked older than when the war began, worn down by 18 months of constant battle, but her eyes were still sharp and dangerous. "Admiral Chen," Thyvan replied. He didn't turn around. "I wondered when you would find me. We've been tracking you for 3 weeks," Chen said. "You could have kept running. Why did you come here?" Thyvan gestured at the destroyed throne with one of his 4 arms. "To see where the old order died. To understand what you've built on its ashes." Chen walked up beside him and looked at the wreckage. "We didn't build anything. We just tore down what was here." "Don't lie to me," Thyvan said quietly. "I've seen your new order taking shape, client species becoming allies, trade routes becoming protected zones, conquered worlds becoming protectorates. You're building an empire just like we did." "No," Chen replied firmly. "We're building something different." "Are you?" Thyvan finally turned to face her. "Your ships patrol the galaxy. Your agents watch every world. Your laws govern trade and diplomacy. How is that different from what the Empire did?" Chen was quiet for a moment. Around them, human marines stood guard while reconstruction crews worked to clear the debris. The sounds of rebuilding echoed through the vast chamber. "The difference," Chen said finally, "is that we remember what it was like to have someone else's boot on our necks. The Empire ruled through fear and force. We're trying to rule through cooperation and mutual benefit." "And when cooperation fails?" Thyvan asked. "When someone challenges your authority? What then?" Chen's expression hardened. "Then they'll learn the same lesson the Empire learned. We drew a line. Anyone who crosses it faces the consequences." Ivan nodded slowly. "So you have become us. The hunters have become the apex predators." "Perhaps," Chen admitted. "But we won't make the Empire's mistakes. We won't assume that strength alone is enough to maintain order. We won't treat other species as insects to be crushed." "Time will tell," Thyvan said. "Empires always start with good intentions." On the planet Terra Nova, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the Galactic Assembly. The Great Hall was packed with representatives from over 200 species. Some had been allies of the fallen Empire. Others had been its victims. All were now part of the new order that humanity was building. "The Terran hegemony is committed to a new model of galactic governance," Elena said from the central podium. "We do not seek to rule through conquest, but through partnership. We do not demand tribute, but fair trade. We do not impose our will, but seek consensus." The audience listened with varying degrees of attention and skepticism. Many species had heard similar promises from the Empire in its early days. They wondered how long human idealism would last when faced with the practical challenges of governing a galaxy. "That said," Elena continued, and her voice took on a harder edge, "the hegemony will not tolerate aggression against member species. We will not allow slavery, genocide, or conquest. These are not negotiable principles. Any species that violates them will face immediate response." In the audience, the representative from the Altarian Republic shifted nervously. His species had been considering a campaign against their weaker neighbors. Elena's words made it clear that such plans would not be tolerated. "The galaxy has seen enough war," Elena concluded. "It's time to build something better. The Terran hegemony offers protection, prosperity, and peace to all who join us. But make no mistake, that peace will be enforced." After the session, Elena met with her staff in a private chamber. The mood was tense despite the diplomatic success. "How many species have formally joined the hegemony?" she asked. 137, replied her aide, Captain Morrison. "Another 43 have signed non-aggression pacts. 22 are still undecided." "And the holdouts?" Morrison's expression grew grim. "The Corvin Alliance is still refusing to acknowledge hegemony authority." They claim their traditional hunting grounds are sovereign territory. Elena sighed. The Corvins were a predatory species that had spent centuries raiding their neighbors. They had been clients of the Empire, providing soldiers in exchange for permission to continue their raids. With the Empire gone, they were trying to maintain their old ways. "They're testing us," Elena said. "They want to see if we're serious about protecting the smaller species." "What are our options?" Morrison asked. "The same options we gave the Empire," Elena replied coldly. "They can join the New Order, or they can face the consequences of opposing it." Deep in space, the Corvin war fleet prepared for battle. Fleetmaster. Grakoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical display. Before him lay the Meriden system, home to a peaceful species of traders and artists. The Meridans had been under Corvin domination for over a century. Now they had declared independence and joined the human hegemony. Grakoth was here to remind them who their real masters were. "All ships, advance to the planet," he ordered. "Begin the subjugation protocols." But as the Corvin fleet moved into the inner system, new contacts appeared on their sensors. Human ships dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Not the converted Imperial vessels that had become so common, but pure human warships built for destruction. "Human fleet detected," his sensor officer reported. 37 vessels. They're broadcasting a warning message." "Put it through," Grakoth ordered. The image of a human admiral appeared on his screen. The woman looked young by human standards, but her eyes held the cold certainty of a predator. "Corvin vessels," she said formally. "This is Admiral Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Force. You are in violation of hegemony space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Grakoth laughed. "Human, you face the greatest war fleet in Corvin history, 200 ships strong. You cannot hope to defeat us with your small force." "You're right," Admiral Rodriguez replied calmly. "I can't defeat you with 37 ships." The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Hundreds of ships dropping out of hyperspace. Not just human vessels, but ships from dozens of species. Former victims of Corvin raids, now armed and allied with the hegemony. "But I'm not fighting you with 37 ships," Rodriguez continued. "I'm fighting you with the combined fleets of 43 allied species. They all remember what you did to them. They all want justice." Grakoth stared at the display in shock. He was outnumbered 4-1 by species that had once cowered before Corvin might. But now they flew under human protection, armed with human weapons, coordinated by human tactics. "You have 1 minute to surrender," Rodriguez said. "After that, we begin the pacification." Grakoth had fought many battles in his long career. He knew when a fight could not be won. But Corvin pride demanded that he try. "All ships, attack formation," he ordered. "Show these prey species why they should fear the hunt." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Corvin war fleet was gone. Some ships were destroyed, others captured. Grakoth himself was taken alive and transported to a hegemony prison facility. The message spread quickly across the galaxy. The humans did not tolerate aggression against their allies. The new order was not built on empty promises. On Earth, President Zhang met with her cabinet in the war room deep beneath Geneva. The walls were covered with displays showing the current state of galactic politics. Green zones showed hegemony, territory. Blue areas were allied space. Yellow marked neutral regions. Red indicated potential threats. The red areas were growing smaller each month. "Status report," Zhang requested. "The Corvin incident has been resolved," reported Defense Secretary. "Adams, their fleet is destroyed, and their leadership is in custody. The Meriden system is secure." "Any other challenges to hegemony authority?" Zhang asked. "Minor piracy in the Outer Rim," Adams replied. "Nothing that local forces can't handle. The major powers are all either allied with us or too afraid to challenge us directly." Zhang nodded, but her expression remained troubled. "What about internal dissent? How are our own people handling the transition? Dr. Kim, still serving as the head of military psychology, spoke up. The veterans are adapting well to peacekeeping duties, but there's still trauma from the war. The tactics we used to defeat the Empire, they left marks on our people. Psychological casualties? Zhang asked. Some, Dr. Kim admitted. But more concerning is the attitude change. Our soldiers see themselves as the galaxy's protectors now. They believe other species need human guidance to avoid conflict. It's a dangerous mindset for a dominant power. Zhang understood the concern. Throughout history, every empire had